Today, I'm going to be walking around and trying to find part-time jobs in Tokyo.
It's way easier to find them here, so I'm going to show you just how easy it can be, give you some examples, give you some of my experience from applying to them in the past.
He slid me a piece of paper. He said, draw as many triangles as you can within 30 seconds.
This is my first time being in this area, so it's actually a bit difficult because I don't know where a bunch of family businesses are lined up, which is where you're going to find the most jobs, I think. I'm going to keep searching for them.
Okay, I see a potential store up there, Eon. Since they're a big chain tent and always have something going on, they're usually hiring, but let's go check. Okay, so I was right. They are hiring here right now. Looks like in the morning it's $13.60 an hour, 10 at night it's $12.10 an hour, middle of the night it's $15.50 an hour, and then if you're a high schooler it's $11.70.
So obviously I can't go in there and record the employees or whatever, but that's just a really small, I'd say like a blend of a convenience store and a supermarket. Like they have a lot of supermarket goods, but they don't have any like fresh produce or anything. I'd say it'd be a pretty relaxed place to work. You'd probably just be stocking shelves. Even a lot of the checkout systems are fully automated at this point. So it'd be a pretty relaxed job if that hourly pay looks good to you. That'd be good if you're living in a really residential place like this kind of area. It's just a bit away from the main city, you know, Kitasenju. You can take an express line to like Tokyo Station. So it's really well connected, but it's still a completely residential area. Everywhere around here that was really closely knit. Okay, I accidentally got super off track and I'm way too deep in residential stuff now. So I'm gonna head back to the main road where I can find some restaurants, hopefully.
Okay, I found something in a small shopping center just off of a main road. This place has a supermarket in it along with a couple of restaurants. This job is for a family restaurant called Gusto. Basically be waiting tables, taking orders. This restaurant has tablets that customers order at by themselves, and a lot of the food delivery to the tables is done by robots now. It's part of a really large restaurant group called Skylark. They have a ton of different brands of chain stores that you can find throughout Japan. And the good news is, on their site, it looks like their hiring page is all translated into English, albeit automatic translations. So they may in theory be willing to hire international workers. To tell you the truth though, I don't think I've ever seen any foreigners working in any of the Skylark restaurants I've been to. I'm not sure why, but it might be worth applying.
Look how narrow some of these pathways are.
Next, this Chinese restaurant called Hirakaya was hiring. It's a much busier restaurant environment, so I went to check out the pay. Not bad, but nothing to write home about. Again, the pay varies by time.
I've been looking at a lot of the typical places like family restaurants and convenience stores that I would normally look for open positions, but I think since this is just such a high density residential area, anything is going to be snapped up pretty quickly. We might have to go a bit further out.
I went further out and found this Burger King. Burger King always seems almost exclusively staffed by foreigners. Then I found a pasta restaurant and the pay here was really low. This was just outside of Tokyo though. Looking for stuff had me running around a ton, so I went to grab some lunch at a very Japanese Texas steak. The last few jobs I found them all within about probably 40 minutes because I got really off track and had to move all the way back towards the station. It just goes to show you can find them all pretty quickly.
One thing I've been surprised by today though is how difficult it seems to find any convenience store jobs. They used to be really abundant, but I'm assuming they're all now getting filled with foreigners who are being paid, you know, the bare minimum. Because I see almost exclusively foreigners in busy areas nowadays.
Okay, I'm fixing to go home now and tell you how I applied to and what the interview process was like for my jobs here.
First of all, look at that. You've still got some really beautiful cherry blossoms hanging around. I guess the season's about over, and unfortunately I haven't been to any Hanami events this year, but I've been enjoying just some local ones around the neighborhood.
Aside from the few jobs that I was able to actually get a recording of, there were several others that I passed. If they weren't extremely clear on what they were, if they didn't have the pay listed, I wasn't taking them. McDonald's, for example, pretty much always has a hiring sign out. They don't have the pay listed, but I'm going to show some of the pays here. It's going to vary based on the part of town that McDonald's would be in. You can imagine what that kind of job would be. It's probably similar to in your country, but it seems like they're a lot more strict and efficient, especially if you're in a busy area. Another one I saw that was high paying was like some kind of hostess or something. It was recruiting women for 4,000 yen an hour, I think. It wasn't very clear on what it would be, but it'd probably be like a hostess bar where you're sitting there having to flirt with men. Back that one specifically was like for older women, I think. So you're gonna find that kind of job, but probably won't be able to work that kind of job if you're on like a student visa or I guess pretty much any other visa except for maybe like a spouse visa, because there's a lot of limits around that, like kind of nightlife work that you can do here unless you're a permanent resident or something. For myself, there have been a handful of times that I've applied to part-time jobs here in Japan. First time I believe was near Shinjuku Station at like a izakaya. It was an underground one. I went there and applied with my friend actually for hiring, and I think they said like limited Japanese okay. okay or something like that. So we went to apply, but to be honest, our Japanese probably just wasn't up to par at all at that time. Toward the beginning of when we just moved here and just started in language school, and obviously, you know, him being from China and me from the US, and we just started like our formal Japanese education, it was really rough. And looking back on it now, I'm kind of glad I didn't get that job, especially knowing how busy izakayas can get. Just imagine someone shouting all kinds of things that I couldn't really understand. I wasn't hired for that. Another one I applied for was Saizeria. It's like a Japanese Italian. It's an Italian restaurant, but it's super Japanese and it's super cheap. The kind of place that, you know, it's Italian, but you know, they also have chicken tenders for the kids. And this is a really strange experience because they had me doing some kind of like leak code. It's not a very high level job, right? I mean, this is probably one of the easiest waiting jobs you could get. But I go in and I apply to this Saizeria and they have like a whole leak code kind of thing set up. It was strange because it wasn't even like, what's your past work experience necessarily? He was asking me like, you know, where are you from? Did you play any sports in high school? I don't know what all he asked, but he just asked about me personally. I guess it's okay because I didn't have any work experience at that time. You know, I didn't know better. At the time I thought this might be a normal interview, but he slid me a piece of paper and he said, draw as many triangles as you can within 30 seconds. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is weird. I knew this was weird, right? But give me a pen, give me a paper, and I just start scribbling as fast as I can, as many triangles as I can, right? And looking back on it, I think I probably know what he wanted. It took me like, I don't know if this took me many weeks or many months afterwards, but I somehow just randomly popped into my head one day. I'm like, oh yeah, I should have just drawn a bunch of lines and then like draw diagonal lines across them and it would have made a bunch of triangles really quickly. So I'm assuming he wanted something like that, maybe just to test my general intelligence. I don't know, it was really weird, right? Because I mean, this has nothing to do with waiting. I mean, anybody could do this waiting job. This was towards the start of my Japanese learning in Japan, so my Japanese level was pretty low, but you know, I was conversing okay. I mean, definitely well enough for this kind of waiting job, I think, because everything is just numbers on the menu. Should be super simple to take orders. So I felt really disappointed that I couldn't get this super easy entry-level job. I walked out of that interview feeling really bad about it. I don't know if other Japanese people had to take that weird leak code style thing. If you get a test like that, I'm assuming you're gonna probably not get the job. After that, I was getting kind of desperate, to be honest, because I needed a part-time job to support my time here. I didn't have a ton of savings. I just had basically enough to get me tuition, to get me started in Japan, and to cover my food costs, but basically I would be, you know, at some point I would have to get a part-time job to cover my time here. And even then I had to get some support from my family back in the US. I'm really appreciative of that, but at the same time I would feel horrible if I didn't get a job and I had to rely completely on them. So that led me to this next place. I don't remember how I found this place. I got an interview at like a construction site. I know you're probably smarter than me and you're already thinking, okay, you're gonna be working a part-time job at a construction site while studying Japanese. Sounds like a bad idea. Yeah, it was a bad idea, but I thought I could manage it because it was only gonna be half a day anyway, like a few hours in a day. Then at lunch I'd be done and I would go off to my afternoon class at school, right? Needless to say, first of all, it made you extremely tired, but not only that, the location would change each day. So I would have to basically find my way around a new area. Now, if I stayed there for any longer than I did, it probably would have stabilized at one or two places. So I would have got used to it. But basically, I got lost. I didn't know the optimal way to get to school, even though I theoretically could have got there on time. I didn't get there on time, and I was gonna get in trouble by the school if I didn't get there in time. So I quit that job. Also, my toe really started hurting because I got steel-toed shoes, but they were in like Japanese size, so it was a little bit too small, and basically that screwed up my foot for a little bit. Not a great experience. It was interesting though, because I got to see the inside of like how a Japanese construction site goes. You know, you get there in the morning, then everybody does like a little exercise together, or they just had a group meeting in the morning basically, and everything was way more labor intensive than it would be in the US from what I've seen. Like, I think stuff like this wouldn't really fly for safety standards in the US because they would have you like get a couple things of sheetrock, so like two, and like throw it on your back and walk upstairs and then like swing it down to be on your shoes and ride up an open elevator and then throw it back on your back, and like there was all kinds of stuff to trip over. So it was an interesting thing to see, but man, it was physical. I need to work out some more before I go back to that. So the other thing was like I had a whole like thick roll of, I don't know what that was. It wasn't carpet or something, but it was super heavy. And so My strength wasn't really up to par for that job, but it was super easy to get. Like, there wasn't even an interview. I just showed up and I was basically accepted already. And the pay was really good. It was 1,600 yen an hour. So that's obviously great for not even needing an interview. And I thought it was gonna go great. It didn't go great. So I don't recommend working some heavy labor job when, even for just half of a day, because, well, maybe it would be okay if it was in a single spot. I don't know. Bad decision for me. Be careful with what you choose when you got a packed schedule. Anyway, I was getting very desperate after I had to quit my job. I was pretty much depressed because I'm like, I couldn't get this simple job in size area. I couldn't handle this construction job. I didn't get my izakaya job, so you could imagine I was feeling really low at this time. I basically called home and I was like, oh, I can't find anything. And I felt bad because my family had to support me for that month. I went down to my local convenience store. I wasn't looking for a job or anything, but they said hiring right there. It's just that same day I went in and I asked them like, you were hiring? I was speaking slow and had like a heavy accent. And I asked, do you have a job? And they went and got someone else. And this lady came out and talked to me. Was she the manager's wife? They kept everything formal during that time, so I don't know, but I think it was the wife of like the owner. She took me to the back room with the owner, and so there was the three of us in there. They sat me down and they had an interview right then and there. It was really quick. I went into the back room, my first time ever seeing the management side of 7-Eleven, so that was kind of interesting. I had an interview with them, and this one was not any leak code or useless information. They asked about my background and stuff. It was nothing like the size area. This actually gave the feel of a real job interview. Oh yeah, I also told them that I was living right over there, so that probably helped. They're like, oh, he's like in this community, so we'll see him around. He's invested in this community or whatever. This was maybe a 3-minute walk from me. They asked me questions like that, and then they had me do some kind of math test. So they asked me, if I gave you this much money and the checkout amount was this much money, how much would you give back and what coins would you give? I did that a few times. They had a timer going, and I thought I did really bad actually because I was kind of slow and I don't really remember how many questions I did in that amount of time. But anyway, they were like, oh, that's fine. And I got the job, so I was really happy about that. And they also said, oh, we have another guy who speaks English. I know he'd be really excited to meet you. They introduced me to that guy later, and that guy, he became my best friend here in Japan. We still talk to this day and meet up sometimes. So I'm grateful for that job just because they were willing to, just take a chance on me and speed things up really quickly too. It's really close to my house, so it was easy to get to once I got home, and it introduced me to my best friend. I was super psyched, I was really set with that, and I'm really grateful. That owner and that lady were great to me. There was nothing off about this job at all. Everyone was so nice. I'd say it was like the perfect job. It was just great. So I found my job in Japan, and it was at a 7-Eleven. And I worked there for pretty much the whole year that I was studying Japanese. So that's how I got my job here. The pay was, I believe, 1,100 an hour. I knew people up in Saitama and Chiba that I think were only making 1,000 an hour, and I felt good because I was making a little bit more. So I'm like, oh, I must be, I probably got a pretty good job. So I think it was probably like 1,200 an hour, which now is kind of considered the lower end. I mean, recently places all around are raising from 1,000 to 1,200 an hour. Now, a ton of the places I looked at today we're in really busy areas, so I really couldn't get a clear thing of the sign without blocking everyone flowing through. I think I saw 3 restaurant things, a couple of fast food things, McDonald's being one of those. The hostess bar thing I was telling you about, busy Chinese food restaurant. There were a couple of izakayas that posted help wanted pictures, but I don't think a foreigner is really going to be accepted in that environment because there's going to be drunk people speaking difficult to understand Japanese. It's in a really small space sometimes. Frankly, you might have older Japanese people that are just going to be harassing you or whatever. Not necessarily, they might be happy that you're a foreigner there. But anyway, it might be a disturbance or something, and I just feel like it's going to be harder to get into one of those. You're going to have better luck, I think, at some big chain tent, especially if your Japanese isn't just in one or something, which at that point, why would you be there and not being a teacher for your native language or something? I didn't cover any native language speaker jobs, covered jobs that pretty much anyone can get into. I don't know about where you all are from, but where I'm from in the US, these real low level jobs that anybody can get into are the ones that are filled up the quickest. You need no qualifications. So anything you need a qualification for, there are probably going to be positions open for that as well. I'm in the IT world, a lot of people needed there. There's always some kind of English job opening. The pay on that could vary. It could be really good or really bad. It's probably going to be better part-time pay if teaching English part-time that pay is probably going to be better than some, 7-Eleven job. One thing to be careful of, if a job seems a little bit shady, there are shady jobs here in Japan too called yamibaito, dark shadow work. Drop something off at this coin locker or something. Deposit money into this ATM here. Anything that's even a little bit suspicious, be careful because it could be this yamibaito. The government recently has been putting out posters warning people about like yamibaito. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not that kind of poster. You might have to try out a few different places. You could have some real grumpy coworkers. I know a lot of like older Japanese women working at some of these places are super bitter and hate their life. I've heard from a lot of people around. I've heard of a lot of instances where you have this bitter old lady making work horrible, but every other coworker's really. You might have to try a few different jobs. Specifically, I know about one, like someone was working at an udon shop and he was a foreigner, and this older lady was saying behind his back, like, why would you have a foreigner here? It doesn't fit with the image of like a Japanese food. You might have some people like that. Don't get too discouraged though. Find some place like I did, with really cool coworkers. Let me know in the comments what your experience has been working a part-time job here in Japan, or working a full-time job if you have that experience. If you're interested in coming to Japan, come join the Discord. We have a bunch of like-minded individuals. Thanks for watching. Bye.